Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a challenge that, let's be honest, every single teacher deals with, keeping that energy up in the classroom. We'll be looking at a really powerful concept from the new art and science of teaching called maintaining a lively pace. And trust me, it can completely change the feel of your lessons.
So, let's start with a feeling we all know. That moment when the energy just seems to leak out of the room. You can see it, right? The eyes start to glaze over, the kids start fidgeting, and you just know you're losing them. It's super frustrating, but it's also incredibly common.
Well, it turns out the solution, according to a whole lot of research, really comes down to your pacing. When a lesson flows smoothly, it keeps that little spark of curiosity alive. It fans the flame. But a lesson that drags, with all these stops and starts, well, it can put that flame out completely.
All right, so here's our game plan for turning that classroom lull into a really lively learning space. First, we'll look at the problem, what we're calling the attention black hole. Then we'll talk about finding your rhythm, we'll open up a toolkit or strategies, see how to grow from novice to maestro, and finally, figure out your next tempo.
Okay, first things first, let's really dig into the problem. Why does keeping students engaged sometimes feel like such an uphill battle? Well, it often comes down to losing momentum and falling into what feels like an attention black hole.
You know, the source material here really pushes us to think bigger than just having a quiet, compliant classroom. The real goal, the true win, is a room full of students who are actively paying attention, who are energized, genuinely intrigued, and maybe even a little inspired. That's the dream, right?
So what's getting in our way? The science points a finger at one main culprit, a clunky pace. Things like slow transitions, interruptions, and those awkward lulls in activity, they are the enemies of student attention. They totally break the flow and make students have to work to re-engage over and over, and honestly, that's just exhausting for them.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, it's not about just rushing through things. It's about becoming the conductor of your classroom's rhythm. It's about you skillfully and consciously managing the tempo of learning.
This is the core idea right here. I want you to think of yourself kind of like a DJ who's reading the dance floor. You're not just playing one song after another, you're controlling the whole energy of the room, you're transitioning smoothly to keep everybody moving. In the classroom, that means shifting between activities without losing that precious engagement.
So how do you actually do that? Let's get practical. Let's open up the toolkit and look at the strategies you can start using like tomorrow to become the conductor of your own classroom orchestra.
The source gives us 4 really powerful strategies to get a handle on this. We're going to talk about planning your instructional segments, adjusting your speed with pace modulation, using something called the parking lot, and grabbing attention right from the start with motivational hooks. First up, planning your instructional segments. This means really thinking through every little part of your lesson, everything from handing out papers to getting into groups. The goal is for each part to flow in a brisk way, but not rushed into the next. Every single second of dead time is a potential escape hatch for a student's attention. And the secret here is to make your procedures really clear. Don't just assume kids know how to transition. You have to teach them. So you identify those friction points like turning in homework, you set a clear goal for it, you write out a few simple steps, and then you have the students practice it until it's second nature. This turns potential chaos into a smooth, automatic routine. All right, the next tool is what's called pace modulation. And this is the real art of teaching happening in the moment. It's all about reading the energy in the room and adjusting your tempo on the fly. Are they getting bored? Speed it up. Do they look confused? Time to slow it down. Think of this as your control panel. The key thing here is that you have specific, concrete things you can do. If you see confused faces, don't just say the same thing again. Slow down. Maybe add a visual aid or give them more time to talk it out in groups. If the energy is dipping, you can speed things up by switching to quick, rapid-fire individual questions. You are in control of the tempo. So, what do you do with those questions that are great, but are completely off topic and threaten to kill your momentum? Well, the parking lot is such a simple, genius solution. You just acknowledge the great question, you park it in a designated spot on the board, and you promise to come back to it later. You make the student feel heard without letting the whole lesson get derailed. It's brilliant.
And finally, you gotta start strong. That's where motivational hooks come in. Before you even get into the main content, you have to grab their attention. A surprising fact, a really short, compelling video, a personal story, these little things spark curiosity and get students leaning in right from the get-go.
So now you have these tools in your toolkit.
But the goal isn't just to use them, it's to master them. So let's look at the path from being a total novice at this to becoming a real maestro of classroom pacing.
The source gives us this fantastic scale for a little self-reflection. So take a second, be honest with yourself. Where do you think you fall in this scale right now? Maybe you're just starting out and sometimes you rush things. Or maybe you're developing an intuition for it. The goal is to keep moving up to where you're intentionally applying these strategies, monitoring how they work, and eventually even creating your own to meet the unique needs of your students.
All right, let's bring it all home. What's the big takeaway here? How do you put all this into practice and start conducting your own classroom rhythm starting tomorrow?
You know, it really all boils down to this. Managing your classroom's pace, it's not just some extra nice-to-have skill. It is one of the most powerful and effective teaching tools you have. It's a conscious, deliberate choice you make, minute by minute, that has a huge impact on engagement.
So, I want to leave you with a final question. After hearing about all these tools and strategies, what's one small change, just one, that you can make to the rhythm of your classroom tomorrow? Maybe you'll teach a new procedure for turning in papers, or you'll try a new motivational hook, or maybe you'll set up your very first parking lot. The journey to becoming a maestro always starts with that first, single step.